Hello folks, welcome to the channel for one last preview for the 2024 NHL playoffs before I do my whole bracket. I will still offer my prediction here. Before I get into the video, I want to disclose my bias here. As some of you do know, I am an Oilers fan, but I do my best to do what an Oilers fan isn't good at, and that is not letting bias get in the way, not letting emotions get in the way. I don't mind showing emotions for comedic purposes or just being honest, but in judgment, I think I'm pretty good at keeping those away. So if you're a Kings fan, I am happy to have you. Might not be around here long because you won't be here for round two. Haha. Sorry. I you might win round one. It's possible. It really is possible. And I am going to talk about the positives for the Kings and how they could win against the Oilers. And it involves winning 4 games. I know you guys aren't used to that. Ha ha ha. Sorry. That's 2 strikes now. But hey, third time could be the charm, which might work for the Kings here, as this is the 3rd time they're playing the Oilers in the first round of the playoffs. It's arguably been the reason that the Kings haven't been able to advance in the playoffs, because people keep saying, well, you haven't gotten to round 2 yet. Well, they've also been playing an Oilers team who has been pretty good. I'm actually going to start on the right side here. I'll move my cursor up so you can see where I'm getting at. About playoff history. Usually I cover all these numbers first, but because these numbers here are the only area where the Kings have the edge, I'm going to start with playoff history and season history, just because it doesn't favor the Kings really at all, except once. Excuse me, sorry, I've been drinking a lot of pop as it's late at night. But again, thanks for having me here and having me on your screen and putting up with my burps. Maybe you enjoy them. I had a larger one in the last one, Dallas Stars and Vegas Golden Knights, if that's what tickles your funny bone. People have a lot of weird interest these days that I don't understand. But anyways, that's a completely different conversation. As for the playoff history between the two teams, one is a lot nicer than the others. The Oilers have been in the playoffs longer than the Kings in these last 5 years. They both didn't qualify in 2018-19, when the year after that, the Oilers qualified to play in the qualifying round, where they were upset by the Chicago Blackhawks in 4 games before getting swept by Connor Hellebuyck. And I mean Connor Hellebuyck, I've mentioned this many times, it was just Connor Hellebuyck, and that's not to diminish all the good players on the Jets. If it wasn't for Connor Hellebuyck, the Oilers would have won the series, or at least would have lost in 7. Anyways, but ever since then, the Oilers have advanced in the last few years. They've won 3 playoff series in the last 2 years, including 2 series against the Kings. They beat the Kings in 7 games in 2021-22, and then took 1 game less last year in 2022-23. After those, the Oilers went on to be kicked out of the playoffs by the eventual Cup winners. The Oilers were swept by the Avalanche in the conference finals 2 years ago, and the Avalanche went on to win the Cup. And then the Oilers lost to the Vegas Golden Knights in 6 games last year in round 2, and the Golden Knights went on to win the Cup. So whoever loses to the Oilers this year, congratulations on winning the Cup. And if you want to follow those trends, you could say it's going to be a Florida team that wins it or goes to the finals. They'll be playing a Florida team because they've been in the finals for last 4 years. Panthers last year and Tampa 3 years before that. Anyways, speaking of trends, another trend is the Oilers being the Kings. It's the rivalry that's begun, or not begun, that's been revived, has only more increasingly favored the Oilers. The gap between the two went from pretty small to growing. Most recently, the Oilers won 3 of the 4 games between the two. They were all pretty tight, though. There was never really a point where it was like, wow, what a dominating performance, except for Game 2, where the Kings won, actually. Let's talk about that. But first, the Oilers beat the Kings In LA, 3-2 in the shootout. It was a very tight playoff atmosphere game. All four of these games were playoff atmosphere games. The last one less so, and we'll get to that when I get to that. But in the second game between the two, the Kings shut out the Oilers 4-0. But after being shut out by the Kings, the Oilers beat the Kings in their last two matchups, 4-2 in Edmonton and then 4-1 in Edmonton. The last one had a reduced playoff atmosphere, though it was still there, because the Oilers controlled the Kings. And by that last game, the Kings had embraced a 1-3-1 style, which, whatever your view on it, works for the Kings. And that's what matters at the end, is did you win the game? And the Kings usually do when they play the 1-3-1 style. But the Oilers were able to work around that very well. And so that is going to be a concern going into the playoffs, is can the Kings make the 1-3-1 work against the Oilers this time around? Because it was only one game. Maybe it was a fluke, but you don't want to bet on that being a fluke. In other words, the Oilers have a 100% success rate against the 1-3-1 this year, or when the Kings are using it. So, but also the Oilers don't want to bet on winning that a lot. But again, the history between the two teams does favor the Oilers, but not by much. Even though the Oilers have won more, it's never been like complete domination. And the Kings do live on in history of the Oilers. When in the early 80s, when the Gretzky era was just beginning, there was a miracle in Manchester where a Kings team upset this dominant Oilers team. So the Kings do have some history with the Oilers. And before you say, I wish we had a 1 versus 8 style playoffs, and then we would have all these repeat series. Well, actually, the Oilers did have a repeat series, and this actually gives, in the 1v8 format, and this gives more hope to Kings fans, is that sometimes the tables do turn. In the 90s, the Oilers played the Dallas Stars in the 1v8 format. I think it was like 3 or 4 years in a row. And the Stars won every single time, except for in the last series in that streak, where the Oilers finally had enough and beat the Stars. So maybe this is it for the Kings, where they finally had enough and beat the Oilers and get over the hump and upset the Oilers. I don't know if I'd go online, on Instagram at least, YouTube. I would, because I want this channel to do good and all that kind of stuff. And there's other teams I like. It's just I wouldn't handle it very well. But anyways, lastly, in this comparison is statistical comparison. Both teams got off to interesting starts. The Kings had an excellent start where they were excellent on the road, and the Oilers got to a horrible start where they were horrible everywhere, really. Since the end, both teams have, well, I wouldn't say the Kings have really turned it around. Both teams went through some stuff, fired their coaches, and have recovered. The Oilers more so than the Kings have. Both of their slumps have definitely held them back in ways in what could have been. Despite the Kings' excellent away record, they ended up still having a top 10 record, but not a top 5 one. When I mean excellent road record to start the year, where they just had a point in every single road game. It was a really long streak. The Oilers, meanwhile, turned around their record to be one shy of 50 wins, including a dominant 28-9-4 performance at home in Edmonton. When it comes to offense, these two teams do play different styles, so it's no surprise that the Oilers style of play favors offense more. That's kind of been the Oilers style for the entirety of their history, except for like in the mid-2000s. But when they went on a cup run to lose to the Hurricanes. But once again, just like the 80s, the Oilers are just amazing offensively. They lead the league in shots for per game and expected goals for via Hockey Reference. That's why they have the deep blue rectangle there with the white numbers, because they're the best at it. They aren't the best at getting goals. You can say they get goaled a lot. I think they do, but maybe at this point, I gotta wonder, is it the system they play that just allows them to get goalied? Maybe, but they still score a ton of goals. 3.6 is a incredible mark. All three of those offensive marks I mentioned do outpace the Kings notably, but none of the Kings' offensive marks listed here are bad. They're still all in the top 50%, and they are top 10 in the league when it comes to shots for per game. Defensively is where the Kings are a better team. Their styles they're all three of their numbers are better than the Oilers' numbers, though we will talk about the Oilers' defense. And I've talked about it a lot because it is often under the microscope, but I think it doesn't get enough credit. But anyways, the Kings' numbers are very good. They're all top 10, and at points top 5. In goals against, top 10 number. Shots against per game, top 10 number. Expected goals against, via Hockey Reference, top 10 number. For the Oilers, these numbers are also very good. They have a lot of top 10 numbers here when you really want to dig into all the numbers, but they are... Well, these are top 10 numbers as well, just not as high as the Kings' numbers. The 2.91 goals against is a top 10 number. Barely. The 28.13 shots against is right there with the Kings. And again, another top 10 number. And the 1.94 expected goals against via Hockey Reference is another top 10 number, just not as high or as elite as the Kings having a top 3 number in that area. So they are different styles. But the Oilers, the gap between the Kings and the Oilers defense is smaller than the gap between the Oilers offense and the Kings offense. Well, it's not like the Kings offense is really low. It's just the Oilers offense is really high. But then that leads into goaltending, which is at the end. Face-offs, the Kings are a good face-off team, but the Oilers have been one of the league's best face-off teams. They've been top 3 and have only gotten better with the additions of Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick from the Anaheim Ducks. Takeaway percentage, Oilers have a slightly favorable number, whereas the Kings have a notably bad number. It's a bottom 5 number. The takeaway percentage, which is takeaways versus giveaways, is at 46.46%. Kings also don't hit or block a lot. The Oilers don't block a lot either. They block a lot less, and I think they could do with some more blocking. I've talked a lot of other videos about how, well, they don't block because they don't need to. I would like to see the Oilers block a bit more, but they haven't always needed to either. But again, I still think they should block a bit more. So I would consider that a weakness. But anyways, they do hit a lot, and even though we can always discuss about the devaluation of hitting in the modern NHL, and yes, it's a real thing, the value of hits is still there. Because, as I've discussed, and a lot of other people discuss, it wears down the other team. And I fully credit the Oilers' physicality in helping us beat the Kings in 2 playoff series in 2 years in a row, because it often gets under the Kings' skin. I've noticed it often leads them to become more undisciplined and leads to a power play for the Oilers, which the Oilers are very, very elite at. They have a 26.14 number, which is top 5 in the league. But do you know what else is top 5? In fact, it's number 2 in the league. The LA Kings penalty kill, 84.92. The LA Kings penalty kill has actually been number 1 for most of the year. It wasn't until recently they were surpassed by the Carolina Hurricanes. So in that sense, the Oilers, one of the Oilers' greatest strengths, also works with the Kings' greatest strengths, or vice versa. So we'll see what wins out. Usually the Kings' ability to kill penalties wins out over the Oilers' power play. We'll see if that stays true in the playoffs. And if so, then all the Kings would have to do is be better than the Oilers 5-on-5, which hasn't been the case this year, as we discussed. Again, things can change in the playoffs. Then lastly, talking about goaltending, the Kings do have 3 more shutouts than the Oilers do this year, 7-4, and a much better save percentage. They've had a 90.9 save percentage this year compared to the Oilers below 90% save percentage at 89.8. It is worth noting that the Oilers' save percentage has only gotten better as the season progresses, though it did have a slight dip in the last few months. It wasn't nearly where it was at the beginning of the year, where it was just cataclysmically, I don't know if that's a word, just really, really bad. It was bad. It was 80s bad. Bad for the 80s kind of thing. But since then, it's been very good. And I do think Skinner is very capable of it. He is very calm, and I think he has a mentality for it. but he hasn't proven it. Last year in the playoffs, he did not have a good performance. And it was good enough for them to win against the Kings. It proved to be one of the main reasons the Oilers couldn't get past the Vegas Golden Knights. It wasn't the only reason. I'm not saying we lost because of Skinner, but it would have been nice if Skinner had a few more 900 save percentage games. I was about to lead into a whole Mike Smith rant because I love Mike Smith. It was quite controversial online, and that deserves a whole video. I'm waiting for him to declare retirement so I can just do this whole tribute video. And my friends know they might have PTSD at this point of how often I talk about Mike Smith. And I'm already going on too long, but he was really good. I kind of miss him, but I love Skinner. I really do love Skinner, and I think Picard has been a very good backup this year. So I do have faith in the Oilers goaltending as an Oilers fan and as a goalie myself. But if I try to say that they've been better than the Kings this year, you should slap me, because the Kings goaltending duo of Cam Talbot and Dave Rittich have surprisingly been one of the league's best. I do think their numbers have been helped by the Kings defense, but it's still been very good numbers. I've seen Talbot and Rittich play. They both have played very well. They work by the eye test, but one has to wonder, can they keep it up in the playoffs? Neither goalie has much of a positive playoff performance in the last few years. Cam Talbot did have excellent play for the Oilers way back in 2017 and 2016-17 season, but again, that was a while ago. Dave Rittich has no notable playoff performances that come to mind for me. Flames fans, feel free to correct me, but I don't think they'll come here and say that he has done great for them in the playoffs. But he's had a good year this year. So that said, even if the Kings goaltending becomes a strength, the Oilers, if there's a team that can break a team's goaltending, it's the Oilers. I go back to 2021-22. Jacob Markstrom was a Vezina candidate. And some people will say, well, he was benefited by the defense in front of him. Yeah, he was, but he was still an excellent goalie. Until he played the Oilers in round 2. He was destroyed. And the year after that, last year, he didn't have a good year. He recovered this year, and I'm happy for him because I do like him. He has had a great year this year, but he was destroyed by the Oilers. The Oilers found a way to beat him and exploited it. And they've done that to other goalies before. It's just that one comes to mind because I just remember the shift it has when we realized in Game 1, Markstrom has a weakness. And we just pounded that weakness because it looked like Markstrom might shut us out of that series in Game 1, and then Hyman scored, and we just realized, oh, we can break them. And the Oilers didn't look back; they won the next 4 games. So if you're talking about, well, we have better goaltending than the Oilers, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We can break it. It's just, can you break our goalie faster is the thing when it comes to the Oilers. Anyways, I hope it's a good series. If you're a Kings fan, I'm sure you hope it is too. I hope you enjoy it despite losing in 4 games. It's not my prediction, and I'm just ripping you. I do hope you enjoyed it. I don't have any ill feelings towards you as a fan or the Kings. In fact, there's been times where I've cheered for the Kings. I'm saying this all because I try being a positive guy, and I'd like you to stick around for the channel. And I'm not just putting this on show for show. I am actually a massive Jonathan Quick fan. I don't mind saying that. I was a fan of Dustin Brown. So I am saying this because I want you to see that, hey, I can be unbiased. At times I've cheered for the Kings. It's just with our recent history, you'll have to forgive me for not having the highest feelings of regard for the LA Kings. But I'm sure you don't have the highest feelings of regard for the Oilers either. So I understand. We'll have a mutual understanding here. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, whether it's information or white noise. I'm okay with either way because they're both of you. I hope you leave a comment and your thoughts on the series and whatnot, and your thoughts on prediction, because I didn't say my prediction. I only hinted at it. You could probably guess I was going to choose the Oilers, but in how many games? I think it's going to take 5. I think the Kings can steal one. They can get in a form and steal a game, but I think the Oilers have just kind of figured out the Kings number. They haven't. I wouldn't say they've had the Kings number per se. And my battery saver notification. I'm almost done, but I think they have it now recently because it seems the new thing that's been working for the Kings is the 1-3-1 defense. Well, the Oilers figured that out in one game, so maybe the Kings adjust and goes the other way. Upsets can happen, but again. I wanted to play Vegas, actually. I kept saying I don't care who we play, but I wanted to play Vegas. And I say that as someone who likes the Vegas Golden Knights because I figured, well, I'd rather beat Vegas in the first round. I'd rather play Vegas in round 1 than round 2. And if we had to lose, I'd rather lose to Vegas than the LA Kings. And I'm going to play the LA Kings again. And I'm sure the LA Kings fans aren't happy about it either. But again, once again, for the third time now, I think, thank you for watching this far. Leave a comment, as I said. Subscribe and turn on notifications. I really appreciate that. You see more of this analysis and insight and my ramblings. And please leave a like on the video as well. And I will see you whenever I see you next.